Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and welcome to today's bonus. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's bonus. Shall we?
Today's first encounter. In the summer of 2016, or maybe 17, I found myself on a bicycle quite a bit. I would just ride around the sweet old town of Green Cove Springs, Florida. Between the murky brown waters of the St. Johns River and the vibrant spring greens of plants that lasted until winter was well set in. This was a beautiful place to be. Sometime after the 4th of July, I was making my semi-routine journey up to the guitar store that was pretty local. It was one of my favorite places to be at the time, and I found myself there almost every day of the week. Most of the time, I would just take the back way to get up there so I could see all of the beautiful brick roadwork and the overhanging trees that the Spanish moss grew off of and shaded the road. Made it really nice back in there. On this particular day, I decided to just keep riding and went right past my turn to go to the guitar store. I found myself in an area that I'd never been before. It stunk and it smelled. It was just foul. All the dirt had turned to mud, the trees had a fuzzy yellow moss growing on them, and I couldn't hear any birds. Now, you'd expect to hear birds when you're as deep in the woods as I was, but it was dead silent. Only a few crickets and some other nasty bugs were audible. Despite being an overall nasty place to be, it was rather pretty. The sun shone through the trees and made a nice, warm little ray of sunshine that danced off the wet, muddy ground. Well, after standing there and looking around the place for a few minutes, I spied a log that I could set my bike up against and have a seat. Well, that must have been really comfortable, because before I knew it, the time had flown by and I was watching the sun set. Now, mind you, it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon when I first left my house that day. And it only took me about 20 minutes to get to this little spot. So as I'm watching the sunset, I think to myself, I haven't been here that long, have I? So I took out my phone, and sure enough, it was about 6:30. Well, I figure I might as well just watch the sunset now, 'cause I'm out here. So I did. And that's when I saw what I saw. 10 minutes later, after watching the sun go below the tree line, I figured I should probably get going. I jumped on the bike and started pedaling as I'm going down this little dirt and gravel path that leads to the spot I was just at. I look up and see what I initially thought to be a tree. However, due to the fact that I was going slow on my bike, I got a really good look at this thing. It looked like a man perched up in a tree like a bird. It was very coarse textured hair, and it had a very unusually clawed feet, very similar to the feet of an eagle or possibly a crane. Kind of a mixture of two. After I got a good gander at the thing, I just looked forward on my bike, trying to think of what it was that I just saw. When picturing it in my head again, I had the urge to turn around, and so I did. This thing was looking at me. Its eyes were very large, very similar in proportion to the eye of South American jungles. In fact, the whole facial structure of this thing looked very primate-like, and quite similar to the eye, but much too large to be one. Its eyes also had a bit of a glow to them, kind of like when you take a picture of a cat with the flash on its eyes and they shine. At this point, I'm a bit shaken up by the whole thing, and I just tell myself to continue down the road and don't think about it. Eventually, I get home safe and sound, but let me tell you, I didn't catch a second of sleep that night. I had convinced myself that the thing I saw was going to come through the window at any minute and have me for a nice little snack. Quick interjection. For those of you who are not familiar with the eye, it's Aye. They are a animal that lives in South America. They have a muzzle, bulbous eyes. They're tiny. And this thing was not. He obviously said that he thought it was a man at first. It was huge. And if you look at the eye and you turn it into almost man size or a little larger, you know what you get, a Dogman. So this poor guy saw a Dogman sitting in the trees and kind of very odd mistaken identity, I guess. But really, honestly, Google it. It'll freak you out because they're very ugly looking little creatures, and just put one on a human's body or a large bipedal hairy creature's body and you'll see Dogman, I'm telling you. Anyway, moving on. Today's second encounter. A woman who claims that her great aunt told her of this experience. One day she was visiting her great aunt, who lived on a rural farm in the southern United States, and asked why. She always sat on the deck with a fully loaded shotgun near her hand. And that was when the elderly woman told her a truly terrifying experience she had in the 50s. She told her that one evening their dogs and farm animals had suddenly gone nuts and just made a complete racket outside. The dogs were barking, the pigs were squealing, and it was just an utter cacophony of noise, making her think something was very wrong. She then says she grabbed her shotgun and headed outside to check on it. And it was then she would come face to face with something that would change her life forever. The woman says of her great aunt's rather dramatic account. She didn't see it immediately, but when she looked toward the barn, there was a big pond on the opposite side of the barn. She saw a frogman, as she called it, coming up from the side of the barn. The creature was walking toward her. It wasn't that tall, she said, maybe 5'4". It was a little taller than her. It had webbed hands, and it was walking straight towards her. She yelled for it to stop, but it continued walking. She stepped off of the porch with her double-barrel shotgun and shot it dead. The blood of the reptilian was green. Her husband heard the shotgun go off, and he came outside. They were elderly at this point. When he stepped off the porch, she said, "Look, I killed something. I killed something, and it's not human." They walked out there to the side of the barn. She and her husband buried the thing. When asked where it was, she said that they buried it right where they killed it, near the barn. After they buried it, the animals got quiet again. Her husband told her not to tell anyone the story. The story doesn't even end there, as a month later she says her and her husband saw a blue UFO fly over their home and land nearby, after which more of those frog-like creatures came out and headed toward the barn where their fallen comrade was buried. The lady would say this happened next. They came out of their ship, and they went straight toward the mound where we had buried the creature. They put their hands over the ground. This dead frogman thing that she had killed came out of the ground. It wasn't alive, it was dead. They took the thing and brought it back to their ship. Then they went over the pond and they raised up their hands, and the spaceship came out of the pond. The pond was bigger than a regular-sized pond. It was almost the size of a small lake. They looked at them, the aunt and uncle, but didn't say anything or do anything. They went back to their ship and just zoomed away into the sky. That's why she keeps her secrets and her double-barrel shotgun next to her, even when she's going to the chicken coop or anywhere else on her land. Today's third encounter. So I was walking to work. I'm a high school teacher after visiting my aging grandmother who lives in Sugar Creek, Missouri. I took this back road alley behind the house since it was a shortcut and I loved the scenery there. It was around 6 in the morning, so it was still kind of dark. The way the alley was is that it's a tiny single-lane road with trees around it, and I was heading west toward the community garden. I heard some chittering sound, so I assumed it was a bird or something. I heard the trash can fall over. Just the neighbor's dog rummaging through the trash, I thought. I saw something behind a tree, and it looks like it was trying to hide from me. It chittered at me and made a mad dash across the pavement into the other trees, and I didn't see much of it, but it was at least 6 feet tall, had black stripes on its body. It stood upright and had 4-fingered hands and was bow-legged. It managed to scratch the strap of my satchel when it ran, and the claw marks looked more precise than rugged. I don't know if it tried to attack me or it was just scared of me and brushed the strap on accident when it ran. I tried telling my buddy about it, but he was sarcastic, and so I assumed no one else would believe me. Today's fourth encounter. A girl claims that she saw a reptilian creature in the summer of 2002 in Northern Virginia. Katie says she was only 6 when her and her family were sleeping at Yogi Bear's Jellystone Park in Page County the morning the encounter took place. My family and I went to visit Yogi Bear campsite. We set up 2 tents next to the river. So when night fell, my sister and I slept in one tent together, and my mom and brother slept in one next to us. It was 5 in the morning when I woke up, not being able to sleep, and I decided to leave the tent. After making sure nobody heard me or woke up, I crept around to where the fire was. The coals were barely still smoking now, and I took a stick and poked it. Then, according to Katie, something unusually attracted her attention. While I was having my fun, I heard a couple of snaps in this little ring of bushes about 10 feet from me. I snapped my head up and stared while my heart was beating 10 million miles an hour. I saw a slightly fuzzy, scale-looking snout poke out, followed by dark, almond-shaped eyes. The thing poked up to its torso out of the brush, sniffing and staring at me intently. It didn't growl or attack, it just stared. I was frozen with fear, shaking and almost in tears. It was silent except for the little bit of breathing sounds. One of the strangest things, she states, was its feet. They looked like hooves, but I've never seen anything like that thing that had hooves. Katie also described the beast as having an all-bony-looking face with sharp cheeks. She says it looked like a mix between a horse and a Komodo dragon, with dark gray-brown color. Eventually, the animal went behind the brush, and Katie headed back to her tent, zipping it up tight and not sleeping until dawn. She doesn't believe there was any unusual smell in the air when the encounter took place. Yeah, it could have been a bear, but I'm very sure it wasn't. I told my parents, but they got angry with me for leaving the tent at night. Today's fifth part of the upload. There are strange stories of a creature prowling the foothills of Fresno County. Of a strange creature with long gray mangy hair and a face of an ape or a baboon. and has both human-like hands and feet. It appears to be sick, coughing and foaming at the mouth. Legend calls it the devil ape or devil fang, but lately it's gone by the name of Watts Valley wolf ape, as it's been seen near Watts Valley Cemetery. There are stories of the wolf ape that the first Native Americans that came over on the Bering Strait coexisted with the creatures, and there are even drawings of the strange creatures that traveled with the Native Americans. When Europeans came over, they found these odd drawings, but no sign of the wolf ape. There is a story that legendary photographer Ansel Adams was taking a picture in Yosemite one day when a pack of wolf apes came upon him while he was in his tent, and he had to stay there for safety. An even more peculiar story is that a wolf ape entered a single-room schoolhouse one day, terrorizing the students and teacher. The children piled up their desks and climbed to safety with each other in the rafters, while the teacher was able to lock himself into the closet. The wolf ape tore through the children's desks to get their lunch. Finally, after having its fill, it left. Yet another story describes a preacher who shot the wolf ape back in the 50s, claiming it to be the son of Satan. He hung it up on the church walls, and the story claims the animal to be at least 10 feet long. Apparently, the preacher got into a bit of trouble as the wolf ape continued to hang around the church for several weeks, and understandably, the place began to smell foul. So the preacher sold it to a traveling circus freak show, and with the money he made off the sale, he traveled up to San Francisco with the dream of starting his own church up there. He was murdered soon after, and his body was so badly mutilated it took several months to identify. Whispers of a curse of the wolf ape was the cause of the preacher's death. Things were quiet for a while, but around the mid-1990s, a wolf ape was seen at Bass Lake, drinking water from the small lake. Interestingly enough, people mistook it for a hairy man who happened to walk on all fours. The most recent and detailed story was recanted on a local Fresno radio station. There were 2 witnesses, a man and his uncle, who were hunting for garnet near Watts Valley Cemetery when a wolf ape came out of the bushes. The creature was described to be 6 feet tall, gray hair, mangy looking dog with the face like a baboon whose eyes were flat on its face like a human's. It opened its mouth, but only a moan escaped its widening maw, and then made a strange sound like a cough. Both witnesses began to run from the creature as it began to chase them. The man threw his lunch at the creature, but that only slowed them for a second. It continued to stalk them over the hills, and the 2 witnesses hopped over a fence and ran through pastures trying to escape the beast. Cows fled as it chased the 2 men. Finally, they found themselves in Watts Valley Cemetery and hid behind some tombstones, hoping to lose the creature. Unfortunately, it caught their scent and started to come towards them, when, in a moment of genius, the uncle threw some cinnamon-flavored chewing gum near the beast, hoping the scent would distract it. It worked, and the beast was occupied for a few seconds. Soon after, the caretaker to the small cemetery arrived and offered to give the 2 men a ride back to their car several miles away. All 3 watched the strange creature for a few more minutes in the safety of the caretaker's truck before it went away. Not much is known about this creature. Theories from failed genetic experiments escaping to another type of Bigfoot has been discussed. Whatever it may be, it seems to be sick, and if cornered, makes it a dangerous animal. Today's final encounter. I was 16, cruising around at night in a small area where people used to go four-wheeling. The area is now developed. This is in eastern Cheyenne, between an area known as Sun Valley and Lincoln Valley Auto Salvage. I was driving in an easterly direction on a dirt road and saw some kind of wolf-like creature in my headlights, roughly 60 yards in front of me. My first thought was coyote, but it was not. It seriously looked like a werewolf from the movies. I only saw it for a couple of seconds. The thing glanced halfway at me, and my lights reflected on its eyes, which were bright yellow and glowing. It also ran over the hill, but it scared the crap out of me. I rolled up both my windows and locked my doors and started turning my 78 K5 Blazer to see if I could catch it in my headlights again. But I ended up not seeing it again, and I was not about to go any further. Like I said, I was scared shitless. I ended up turning around to the nearest neighborhood by a couple of street lamps, unlocked my door, and bailed out and immediately scrambled to the ground to look under the truck. Much like bailing off your bed as a kid, leaping halfway across your room and jumping down to look under your bed, just to prove that nothing is really there. I still laugh about it. I had to look crazy to anybody in that neighborhood who would see me. So to best describe what I saw was like a wolf, but it was like a movie werewolf. If it stood up straight, it would have been about 5 feet tall. It wasn't completely covered with hair, if any at all. I remember it had a dog-like face with cheek tufts and shorter, pointed ears, as well as a snout like a dog. Its arms were like an orangutan's, and its hind legs were shorter than a human's, like I said. Like the movie werewolves, except it wasn't all huge in the shoulder and neck like you see in a lot of the comic book werewolves. I grew up in Wyoming, and my mom and grandma never really talked about stuff like this much. If UFO was mentioned, they would reply in a casual manner. Ghosts were referred to in the same manner. It's just something that's normal. You really don't think about how exciting it really is. This is why I kind of forgot about it until tonight. Now, what is creepy is I figured my girlfriend would just probably find it an interesting story. Instead, she proceeds to tell me about 2 separate friends who didn't even know each other, telling her about a giant Batman creature south of town. Needless to say, the hair on my arms stood on end. That's exactly how this creature stood, like a giant bat. The creature I saw wasn't hairy all over, although I do remember it having hair on the outer portion of its arms and on its cheeks. In my mind, I remember it being kind of leathery, so we proceeded to look online to see if there's been any other reports of such a creature in Wyoming. So far, really hasn't turned up much. Although Wyoming has some really odd stories about Bigfoot and other things.
Well, there you have it, folks. Today's bonus. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that keeps the channel growing and going, and honestly what gives people a chance and a place for them to share their experiences and theories judgment-free. Just simply treated with the respect that we all deserve. Everyone stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there, and they are definitely dangerous. Share this information with the people you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Till next time, never stop asking questions. Never stop searching for the truth. And God bless.